Hi folks, welcome back. So I am a big fan of Marvel comics, in particular X-Men comics. I've been collecting them pretty much my whole life. Yet, funnily enough, I've never actually made an X-Men statue. So it is time to change all that, and I'm going to be making Psylocke from X-Men. Now, this is one from LA Figures, which is one of my favourite patrons at the moment. So she's put it all together, she has been primed. You can see how wobbly she is because she isn't actually glued into place. As I've said before, these guys are really good at sculpting characters where essentially the model can hold itself together, which makes it really easy to paint in sections. So I've printed her in 1/8 scale. So I did increase the file size a little bit because I think they come pre-loaded at 110 scale. The sword does come out of her hand, and the psionic blast also attaches from the other hand. So it took me a little while to put this one together. There was a lot of sanding. I mean, she's got a lot of flesh on display, so you have to really make sure that everything is smoothed down as evenly as you can get it. Any sort of dimples and holes left from the support marks have to be taken care of. You don't want to sort of have any blemishes, whereas it's going to be really obvious on a model like this. So I'm actually now a little bit worried about putting paint on it, to be honest. I'm pleased with how it looks with the primer and everything. I think I've got everything nice smoothed down. I just hope I can do a paint job that justifies it. I'm not used to doing skin, so well, let's see what happens. The biggest problem with skin tones is if you're trying to paint sort of any type of pink skin, all those colours are very, very thin. So I've been playing around with different colours and I think I've come up with a better plan. Now I may sound mad, but instead of using pink, I'm going to use orange. I'm going to mix that up about 50-50 with some deck tan, which is a sort of an off-white. Now, believe it or not, you put orange and white together and it kind of makes a sort of a peachy colour. So let's see. I think this will hopefully be slightly thicker than if I tried to use any sort of flesh coloured tones, and I'm hoping after a couple of coats that this will kind of give the right sort of colour. So we'll see. We're experimenting here. I haven't done this before. What can possibly go wrong? At the end of the day, it's only paint. We can always paint over it. So it took about 3 coats, but you know what? That ain't bad. I'm pretty happy with that as a skin tone. Yeah, I think that's going to do. It went on pretty smoothly as well. So I think that looks pretty good. So let's expand on that and get some washes over it. So the first of those washes is going to be a red wash. So to make that, I've simply taken some bloody red and really watered it down. So it's more water than paint at this point. And then what we're going to do is just paint it on, try and get it into the recesses. And as we apply this, we're also going to take a lot of this off. We're going to do that with a sponge. You could use a paper towel, but I think that doesn't quite do it right. Paper towel tends to leave a slight sort of tea stain type look, whereas the sponge is a bit more even as it takes it off. So that's kind of the effect we want, obviously making sure any areas where it's pooled are taken care of. We're now going to repeat that step, this time with a watered down blue, and we're going to go and do the exact same thing we just did, making sure we hit some of the recesses as we put it on. Don't put it on too much, but also take off with a sponge as we go along. So hopefully the camera is picking that up, but I'm quite happy with those skin tones. It's definitely helped make it a lot more realistic. It's shadowed in the recesses. It's even done a little bit of sort of red marks around the bands on her arms, so it actually looks like there's sort of a little bit of pressure points where that's strapped around, so added a bit of happy accident there. If I flip the hand, hopefully if it focuses, again, you can see the recesses have kind of died in. The blue, the blue isn't picking up on camera, but it's really effective. It kind of does look like a slight bit of veining across the body. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, I was debating whether or not to go in with a dry brush over the top, but I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm going to leave it there. If I pick out... Again, hopefully try and focus. Yeah, I mean, skin tones, there's definitely different colours there. That, you know, there's sort of a slight blotchy reds and blues, which, as I say, really does help sell the effect. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I think we'll just leave the skin tones there and start working on to the rest of the model. I'm going to carry on with the face, because I think once I've got that done, that's going to be the hardest part out of the way, and it should all be plain sailing from there on. Starting with the hair, I'm going to take some Nagaroth Night, which is a lovely purple shade from Citadel. I'm just going to go all over the hair and obviously make sure when I get round to the face that I don't hit any of that flesh colour. The hair is then followed up with a dry brush of blue violet. And that is the hair all finished. So what I'm going to do now is start looking at some of these details on the face. To start with, I'm going to take a very small size 0 brush, and I'm going to take some black, and I'm going to paint in around the top and bottom of the eye. And try my best to avoid all the flesh colour. Next up, I'm going to take some corn red, and I'm going to start doing the lips. And again, steady hand needed once again, also paint on your brush needed, to make sure you don't want to go over any of those skin tones. I'm now going to take a little bit of that original dark purple I used in the hair, and I'm just going to feather it slightly into the eyebrows. So I just feel that the black eyebrows are a bit too stark. Next, I'm going to take an off-white and white in the eyes. Now, the white I'm using is Deck Tan, but any off-white will do. So, doing a mix of about 50-50 of those two purples that I used for the hair, I'm going to now paint in the eyes. Now, I'm going to need a thin brush, and I'm also going to need a very steady hand. And I'm certainly not going to attempt to do this on camera, so I'm going to come back and show you hopefully the finished result that isn't too wonky. Okay, so those are the purple of the eyes put in. It's a little bit tricky because this eye is kind of behind some of the hair, but I think it's okay. They're both kind of looking the right way, so that's the main thing. What I would say with eyes is always go bigger than you think you need. I think the thing that often looks wrong on models, particularly the smaller models, is if the eyes are a bit too small. So always err on the side of caution and make them bigger rather than smaller. So next thing to do then is to put in the pupils, and again that's going to require a very steady hand, and I'm going to do that off camera. And here we are with the eyes finished. I dotted in the black and also did a dot of white as well, just into the corners there. I might come back and do some pastel work around the eyes and around the cheeks. I'm not sure yet. I'll see how I go. But for now, it's looking okay. I'm going to move on to the next part. The majority of the costume is blue. So for this, I'm going to be taking some Macragge blue and going over the legs, the arms, and the body. For the side details, I want to do a different blue, so I'm going to do Cantor blue, which is a sort of a navy dark blue, and it'll just hopefully break up the blue a little bit. And then I'm going to use Bloody Red for the belt, which is quite a high intensity red, which is exactly what I want. Now I'm going to take some of that Barrack Burgundy from Citadel, and I'm going to run it along I'm not sure what you'd call this part, this sort of seam I suppose, just to split up the blue a bit more. For the Psionic Blast effect, I'm going to base coat that initially with some Blue Violet by Vallejo. Next up is Screamer Pink, and I'm just going to do a dry brush of this all over that purple. Followed up with a dry brush of Pink Horror. Then a dry brush of Squid Pink. And then one final dry brush of White Scar. Trying to concentrate more on the sort of the points. And that's the final result after all that dry brushing. You could have obviously printed this in a transparent resin and probably done some sort of clever things with some inks that way, but I'm not really a fan of that. I have to say, I don't have any transparent resin admittedly, but I always think that kind of effect just simply looks like a piece of plastic. So yeah, it's not for me. I prefer just the painted approach for these sort of effects. I'm going to now start working on the sword, and to do that I first of all used some of this stuff. So it's chrome paint. I bought it a can from Halfords. I think it was $6.99. It's a pretty big can. It's a 500ml can, so hopefully it lasts a little while. It was not the easiest paint to use. It's quite runny, but it sort of did the job, I think. Sorry, let's take that away so it can focus. This is the sword. This is what we're left with. Come on, you can focus. There we go. So yeah, it's all right. It's definitely got, you know, the sheen to it. It's definitely better than if I just painted it regular silver. Obviously, I'm going to paint the handle, but yeah, I think it's quite good for what it is. So now I'm going to move on to the handle. And for that, I'm going to use some burgundy from Citadel, which is quite a nice colour, and hopefully it will go over this silver fairly easily. Might need a couple of coats. That is then followed up with black into the little diamond shapes that run along the handle. That is then followed with some Retributor Armour Gold for the crossguard and the part at the bottom here. That is then followed up with a black wash over the handle, over the wrap. Try and avoid the gold paint, so I'm going to do a different colour on that. For the gold parts, I'm going to cover that with Reikland Flesh Shade. So in exactly the same way, just being careful not to spill it over onto the silver of the blade or onto the handle. And then that is followed up with a very light dry brush of Runefang's steel just across the top there, just to catch some of those edges, bring out some of that detail. For the fingernails, I have mixed in equal parts of Cadian Flesh Tone and Deck 10, which gives a very light pink. Let's see if I can zoom in there. There you go. See, I've done the thumbnail there, so it's just a case of going around and doing the rest with that colour. Now, to finish off all the clothing, including the red sash, what I've done is taken some black pastel, and I'm going to work this into the crevices to bring out those shadows. So essentially anywhere around the musculature or around any creases, just work it in gently, and should after a little while give you a nice shadow effect. So just wipe away the excess, blend it in a little bit. Hopefully you can see a nice little shadow now come in. So it's just a case of going across all the parts of the clothing, as I say, obviously looking out for the main sort of creases, that kind of thing. And just doing it little by little until you're happy with the effect. Okay, so this bit is settled, but I've taken a bit of red pastel and I've just worked it into the cheeks, just to give her a sort of bit of blush, I guess. And I've also worked it into just slightly under the eyes. And again, this is something you don't want to go too hard with this. Little and often, so just create a bit of shadow there, a bit more realism in the face. So I'm now going to start working on the base, and the base is very straightforward. It's pretty much just a load of dirt, rubble, that type of stuff, and some kind of concrete flagstones on the top. So I'm just going to dry brush the whole lot. I'm going to start with the darkest brown that I've got, which is Rhinox hide, and I'm just going to go in and try and dry brush in these parts in between the concrete slabs. And at this point it really doesn't matter how messy I go. If I hit the concrete with the paint, it's not a big deal. Followed up with a dry brush of Mornfang brown. Still Legion Drab next. And I did one final dry brush of Beta brown. Now start doing the concrete slabs. So I'm going to start with Vallejo Somber Grey. Now I'm going to go quite heavy on this to start with, but again I'm going to come back in and dry brush it with some lighter greys. Okay, so at this stage what I want to do now is start throwing some washes over it, just to break up the colour a little bit. So I'm going to be throwing browns, oranges, greens, anything really that I've got to hand. And there's no rhyme or reason to this, just literally mix up all around, merge a couple of colours together. So there's a bit of brown, let's throw in some green. And yeah, just throw it all, slap it all on, try and get it. You don't have to cover every little bit. It's just a case of breaking up some of the colour really, because rock is all sorts of colours. So the wilder you go, the better. So after all that's dried, it's looking pretty good. It's got lots of nice colours and textures in there. So what I'm going to do now is another dry brush, just for a change, and it's going to be Administratum Grey. So this is quite a light grey. And I'll be a bit gentler this time round, being a bit more selective on where I want to focus the slightly brighter grey. And then finally one last dry brush of Deck Tan, and this is obviously almost a near white colour, so I'm going to be very light on how I apply this and just pick out just the odd part here and there, because a little goes a long way. And with that last little bit of dry brushing done, I think it's finished. So fairly happy with how that's come out. Nice and simple. Is definitely the way forward with these type of bases. So everything is now all finished, so I'm going to glue the model together and I will come back and show you the final reveal. And here we are then folks, the final reveal. So I'm quite pleased with how those tones came out. That little bit of pastel on the face really helped. And I think she's come out pretty well. Just spin her around. It's a shame that the Power Blast is kind of facing down, because a lot of the paintwork you can't actually see. But you can kind of still see the effect. I quite like the sash at the back there and the windswept look on the hair. So yeah, overall I think it's a really nice model. Very well sculpted. I did have a bit of a catastrophe when I tried to slide the sword into the hand. The additional paint obviously applied to the hand and both the sword meant that it wouldn't fit in, so a lot of the paint scraped off, unfortunately. But so I did have to repair that. So if you make this model, just a word of caution on that one, it's probably makes sense to actually glue the sword into the hand and then paint it as one piece, although that's going to be a bit more of a pain to do. I think you're probably going to get a nicer result at the end of it. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with this one overall. I say it's not, I don't make many comic book characters despite really liking comic books, so this will probably definitely change my mind on that one, and maybe I'll start making some more. I think the scale is quite good. The 1/8 scale seems to be my new favoured scale at the moment. They just don't take up that much room, but they still look pretty impressive. Base is looking pretty good. Nice and simplistic. Quite pleased with the skin tones overall. And yeah, she definitely looks the part. I mean, it looks like Psylocke, you can't deny that, I don't think. Now I just wanted to bring in another couple of models that I've made from LA Figures, just to compare the sizes really, and to see how well they all fit together, are they right in scale, that kind of thing. So these are the 3 figures that I've made, and yeah, I think they look pretty good together. I mean, Ralph looks a little bit small, but he is crouched down, and the turtles are slightly smaller characters anyway. But I think this is quite a good selection because you kind of got all bases covered here. Trapjaw is a larger character anyway, obviously being male, female character, and then, you know, whatever a turtle is in between. But yeah, you look at the 3 of them and they definitely fit together quite nicely. The scale is definitely there. What I also like is, I'm assuming it's the same sculptor that does all of them, because they certainly have a collective look to them. Even though they're 3 completely different franchises, they don't look wrong next to each other. The scale, the pose, the sculpting, it's all there, which is really nice, because you don't really get that with any other lines. You know, even things like the bases are all kind of done in the same way. You know, they haven't stuck any logos or anything silly like that on it. They're all simplistic poses. I like the kind of the museum type pose. So yeah, I'm really happy with this set, and I will certainly be revisiting all 3 of these lines. My favourite is Masters at the moment, so I'm probably gonna start looking at some more of those characters next. But yeah, eventually I will do all the Turtles, I reckon, and a few more of the X-Men. At time of writing, they've just released Sabretooth, so I've got that file now, but I probably won't get to him for a little while. I'm not too sure what I'm going to do next. But yeah, I just thought this was a nice little look. Now obviously I've printed these at 125% scale, so roughly 1/8. The files come pre-cut at 110. So, but it's just good to know that obviously if you do scale them up, they still stay consistent in their sizes. So I think that'll just about do it for this video, so I hope you got something out of that. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment, as it just helps the old algorithm. And I will see you in the next one.